It's the 11th of the 12th, 2025. The time is 25 minutes past 10. And as always, that means one thing, that there are a multitude of F1 centric threads at which we need to pull, outlaw, John, Max, Dirks, Frank. Of course, we've got to talk about Gianpiero Lambiase and his future. What's going on? What might it mean for Maximilian Verstappen? We'll talk about Max Verstappen's elected number for 2026. We've got to talk about another couple of different things. We'll talk about the rules and regs going into 2026, the mule testing, so too, and which one of the teams came more prepared to the Abu Dhabi test than the others. But in the first instance, I want to talk to you about something else. This is important. Learn from this. Formula One Liberty Media so desperate to get some mainstream clout. You've seen a gazillion videos. Carlos Sainz with chicken shop date woman. They're desperate. They want to expedite for their mainstream learning curve, don't they? But there is a way to do this, to go about this. Let me show you something. We talked about this for on a gazillion different occasions now. This is something that the UFC do during their broadcast. And again, we have this conversation under the aegis of what good looks like as far as an F1 broadcast. This is what the UFC do. This is a Topuria fight, one of the legends, a champion as of the time of writing. Bottom left-hand corner, you can see a tweet from Paul Fontaine opining on who he thought won that last round. So too, bottom left, you can see an accredited UFC journo opining on who he thinks wins that round. Now tell me, chat, why we can't do this in F1? Why something doesn't happen? Why something's happened? Why can't we cite Terry Crews as an example, or Gordon Ramsay, or a Stormzy, or a Jay-Z who thinks this about the race, or maybe Max Verstappen should leverage the undercut? Why can't we have F1 specific celebrities, guys and girls that know a little bit about it, rather than us just mainstream clout jockeying? This is important here, because there's a dude called Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and he's a real F1 fan. It's got something to do with Walking Dead. Again, a gangbusters show viewed by billions all over the world, if word on the F1 curb is to be believed. This is what that dude was tweeting at. I think this is an important bit, chat. Here's what he was going back and forth with in the season finale at Abu Dhabi. And we didn't know this because F1 didn't put this up on the screen as they should have done. Jeffrey D. Morgan says that Zach Brown is such a weenie, not a big fan, screws up his own team, but only cries about everything else. Figure out your own SH1T, dude. Feel bad for Piastri. Hope he bows. Put that on the screen, Liberty Media. This is gold. This is currency. This is the way to court mainstream clout. He's a real fan. He's invested in it, chiming in on the Zach Brown circumstance. I know, by the way, I don't know much about Jeffrey D. Morgan, but I don't hate his Zach Brown take. Go in, sir. Again, Zach Brown deserves all the SH1T. He says, trophy for boning. Oscar is about it. God, I hope Piastri tells him to shove it where the sun don't shine. Papaya rules. My AWS. Lando rules, perhaps. Oh, the humanity. What are we doing here? This is gold. Where has this dude been all my life? And Liberty Media, why don't we know about this? Can you imagine you flash this up on the screen during the broadcast, how viral it could get? They've been caught in virality by dint of Martin Brundle's grid walk. I don't think that's fit for purpose as of the time of writing, the 11th of the 12th, 2025. Do this, chat, surely. And then he doubles down and gets a bit techier than techie things. This makes me know he's a man of my ilk, of my personal persuasion. Here's what Jeffrey Dean Morgan signs off and says: congrats to Max Verstappen. Chaos. I thought Lando Norris was the champ, but he continues, dude is the greatest, but it's time to put on my Seahawks hat now. The joys of Sundays with both F1 and Hawks are over. Oh, the humanity. Let's go. I mean, he's not wrong though, is he, chat? Maximilian Verstappen, not too bad. Your boy's taken a bit of flack of late for courting one Maximilian Verstappen. Talk about F1, they say. I push back constructively to such statements. How can I talk about Formula One as of the time of writing if I don't talk about Maximilian Verstappen? Not a bad peddler. Proof positive is the 2025 season that he came so close to winning the Drivers' Championship despite not because of the multitudinous foibles of the aerodynamic and mechanical variety of his RB21 car. How very dare you insinuate for 1 second that one could talk about F1 in 2025 without talking about Maximilian Verstappen? Oh, and to that point, Dr. Obbs has told us, he's given us the inside scoop. And again, Dr. Obbs is a goated one as far as in the know things and Red Bull. As far as the balls that are red are concerned, Dr. Obbs has all the friends. He's an octopus, therefore a true in the know guy. And he's telling us that as far as Maximilian Verstappen's number in 2026, that it's not going to be 69. That was a joke. Nor will it be 33. Nor will it be number 1 for the incumbent drivers champion, Lando Norris. That's what he will assume. Max will take number 3. And again, he used to drive the number 3 back in the day in karting. So it's now maybe it's more apropos than not. So let me tell you something else, chat. We have to talk about these bits and bobs. Now, I touched on it the other day. Listen, there was a mule test in Abu Dhabi, 2 sets of tests. There was TPC and there was 2026 cars being tested in inverted commas, not proper 26 cars because they haven't come out yet, but they adapted both the rear and front wings with a view to simulate the active aero that so characterises the problems over which the teams will need to come in 2026. Now, a couple of teams nailed it differently. Mercedes came with this on the right hand side of your screen with a view to simulate what the front wing will be doing. Lest we forget, there will be no DRS. What will happen is that they will back off the rear wing and the front wing will back off too. So this is what they call active aero. And again, some say, mention their names, friend of the channel, Peter D. Windsor, that this is potentially dangerous because if it fails, you have yourself a Jack Doohan 2025 Suzuka Turn 1. It is techie. And I hope there's fail safes in there. That there needs to be because there have been too many DRS accidents. But that notwithstanding, they're going ahead. Now, you would anticipate that all 10 teams would come. There's a couple of reasons why they want to simulate this. And again, the front wing will need to back off. Therefore, the load that if you're going to simulate the load on the front tyres, you will need for the front wing to back off. This is important, chat, because only 2 teams came with contraptions, agricultural or otherwise, that simulated for this. One was Mercedes, the other was Scuderia Ferrari. Scuderia Ferrari's contraption, infinitely more sexy, better aesthetically than was Mercedes. But yet and still, the Aesop's fable is this. 2 teams came prepared for the mule test at Abu Dhabi. One was Mercedes, the other was Scuderia Ferrari. Now, take that for whatever you will. Maybe it's a nothing burger. Maybe ultimately Red Bull come ready for testing proper in February and have all of the marbles. But I think this bodes well for Ferrari and Mercedes. Of course, it was just a tyre test. All of the upshots here are only for Mario Isola and Pirelli. But yet and still that Mercedes came ready and Scuderia Ferrari comes ready, I think bodes well for the extent to which they're prepared for 2026. Oh, and by the way, we've got to talk about Giampiero Lambiase because there are conflicting reports. I'm going to talk to this. Forget the slides. This is important. Need to leverage some common sense here. Racing News 365 have reported that Giampiero Lambiase potentially will step away into a more senior role. Now, why is this key? Let me set the context. Maximilian Verstappen loves himself some Giampiero Lambiase. You only need to look at Lewis Hamilton and Adami and how they're struggling to understand just how instrumental it is to have not just a good racing engineer, but a good relationship with said race engineer. Adami was talking all of the wrong things, giving the information at the wrong times. And when Lewis Hamilton gives his sentimental leadership speech at the end, Adami is nowhere to be seen. To which Sir Lewis Hamilton says, I say all that. I pour out my heart and say we lead and we crack on. I give that speech, and that's the only time when you've got nothing to say. What are you doing, Adami? Maximilian Verstappen never has to wrestle with that, because he's got this big brother, little brother relationship with Giampiero Lambiase, doesn't he? However, look, this is important, chat. You know already that Giampiero Lambiase, if I were Giampiero Lambiase, conjecture and speculation, I think I think Barcelona will be a thing in Gianpiero Lambiase. He said, also, we know that personal circumstance has meant that he missed 2 Grand Prix this season. GP will want to give his all to the Max Verstappen campaign in 2026 because I think he will need it, especially if rumour and word on the F1 curb is right about the Red Bull Ford powertrains collaborations lacking in power and efficiency. GP won't want to half-ass this then. I think the reports are maybe off the mark. Here's what I think if I'm leveraging some common sense. GP will want to give 100%, and therefore I don't think he'll be racing engineer to Maximilian Verstappen next year, so long as Red Bull can find somebody fit for purpose, equal as far as GP's commitment and expertise and competence. GP might need to prioritise whatever is going on in the back. I don't want to speak to his personal circumstance, but sometimes, some say in F1, it is important, but is it more important than family and health and life? I think not. And I think GP will take a step back. Here's me conjecture and speculation. I'm guessing here, but leveraging some F1 common sense as one needs to. I think GP will probably take a step back next year. But what does that mean for Max Verstappen and his future? No more Christian Horner, no more Jonathan Wheatley, Rob Marshall gone, Adrian Newey gone, now Dr. Helmut Marko gone. You think for a second if they do not build Max Verstappen a god tier car as at 2026 that he won't leave without company? I think he won't hesitate. He'll press that escape button with immediate effect. Of course he will, especially in the knowledge that he's got the performance clause now, not in the top 3, top 2. Lest we forget, if he's not within the top 2 as at the summer break, Maximilian Verstappen can null and void his contract. This is going to get techier than techie things, chat. I think that dude, again, I don't. My crystal ball is murkier, just as murky as the next person's, and I don't want to do predictions, but the probability of Max Verstappen being a Red Bull racing driver as of 2027 diminishes more and more materially by the second. So they need his agreement and approval from the FIA, says Max, like number 5 for Gabby. Yeah, number 3. I think he'll take the number 3. If Dr. Rob says, then you can take it to the back. Danny Rick should have been Max's race engineer. I don't think that's a good idea. Chat, failures should default to close. Danny Rick said Max and Habit. I don't think he wants the number 33 anymore. Wasn't the number 33 just a placeholder because he couldn't have the number 3? I think he'll take the number 3. I think you can take what Dr. Rez Arb says to the band. Baxty B in the house. He's a great actor and his Walking Dead character was playable in Tekken. Mate, put him up on the screen then, Baxty. What are we doing? I don't know. I think Liberty Media and the F1 need to have a word with themselves lest they wish to be deemed abbots of F1 reason. You guys have been legends. We'll be back later on. A shakedown proper. Baxter B and Lenny arguing about Formula One. And discussing, pulling at all of the pertinent narratives and threads between now and then. What are we doing?